After being trafficked to a secluded mountain village, the villagers intended to offer me as a sacrifice. Unbeknownst to them, I was a presence far more sinister than the deity they revered. I had taken possession of the body of a girl who had just passed away. She had taken her own life, her neck nearly severed in two. With an effortless twist, I mended it as though it were mere clay. Dead girl, so you fled to this forsaken place. I've been searching for you endlessly. A voice, urgent and raw, reached me from behind. I turned to face it. A middle-aged woman, her face contorted with fury, charged toward me and grasped my hand fiercely. I've secured a job for you, and you vanished without even a word. How do you expect me to face those people? You know all too well your brother has taken up those costly piano lessons, costing hundreds for just one session. Don't think I'm heartless. As a girl, skipping education might be permissible, but your brother is our family's heir. Without an education, he'll never secure a good job, and without a good job, a wife will remain out of reach. The woman clung to me, her words tumbling out endlessly. I wrinkled my brow in annoyance. Such a bothersome woman. Perhaps it's simpler to just devour her. As she droned on, she remained blissfully unaware that behind her, my face had grotesquely transformed. A thick, flesh-colored tentacle stealthily snaked from my mouth, targeting the back of her head. In an instant, the woman excitedly waved toward someone in the distance. "Hey, I found my daughter. Right here. Come quick." I retracted the tentacle that had extended from my mouth. With a forceful tug, she pulled me out of the alley. Several imposing men stood before us. The leader, menacing with narrow, slanted eyes, gave me a cold, calculating look. With a sharp push from the woman, I stumbled into him. He seized my chin tightly. "It hurts," I managed as tears started to spill. The other men audibly swallowed. Trying to ingratiate herself, the woman boasted with a bright smile. "Didn't I tell you? Chingu? My daughter is quite the beauty." Chingu released me and declared icily, "The payment has been made to your account. She's no longer your concern." "Absolutely, Chingu. She's all yours now to handle as you see fit," the woman exclaimed, her face alight with glee. I looked at her in horror. "Mom, you said you had found me a job?" The woman guiltily turned away. "Don't blame your mother. Blame it on you being a girl." She scurried away. Little did she know, just before she fled, a tiny tentacle stealthily slithered up her trouser leg. A moment later, a damp towel was pressed firmly against my mouth. I lost consciousness, or rather, I pretended to. Feigning disorientation, I opened my eyes to discover myself in the cargo bay of a truck. My limbs were tightly secured with thick ropes. The air was oppressively humid and stifling, the temperature nearly 40 degrees. A repugnant odor filled the space. A girl lay semi-conscious on the floor, her breathing labored, her cheeks unnaturally flushed. "Water!" she rasped in a frail, broken voice. Methodically, I freed myself from the ropes and approached her. Crouching beside her, I studied her with a mix of curiosity and detachment. Clearly, the girl was on the brink of death. She lay like a fish out of water, gasping for life, emitting a last, desperate plea. I tapped her forehead lightly with a finger, and instantly, her memories poured into my mind. She had ventured here on purpose, to find her missing twin sister. Devising a ruse, she had sold herself for 10,000 yuan. Trapped in this cramped, sweltering cargo hold, she had endured a full day and night without sustenance. Her life force was rapidly waning. In her dwindling moments, she seemed to muster a flicker of awareness, her eyes desperately wide, pleadingly fixed on me. I smiled. "If I save you, will you do anything for me? Belong to me forever? Live for me? Die for me?" I murmured enticingly into her ear. Her face flickered with hesitation, but she soon nodded with all the strength she could muster. I bit open my wrist. Drops of blood fell on the girl's lips. She licked them eagerly. Quickly, her complexion normalized, and her breathing stabilized. She sat up, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and gratitude. fixed on me. "What should I call you?" she inquired, kneeling tremblingly at my feet. I pondered for a moment. Once, I was called an indescribable monster. I bear no name. However, this body was once known as Jiang Nuo. "Just call me Xiao Nuo," I suggested with a faint smile. "Xiao? No?" Her expression froze slightly. She shook her head, still fearful. "I can't simply call you by your name. I must call you master." She then settled beside my feet, seemingly older than me, yet resembling a fragile young animal. "My name is Song Yuan. I allowed myself to be captured on purpose. My sister disappeared a year ago. I've searched relentlessly for her, filed police reports, posted missing person notices far and wide, yet without a trace. Just last week, I dreamt of her. She lay on the ground, bound and surrounded by people in masks, who chanted incomprehensible words. I could feel my sister's terror. I screamed her name, and incredibly, she heard me. Struggling, she turned her head towards me and uttered 2 words, 'Run away.'" Song Yuan's lips subtly trembled. Her face paled, as if she were reliving some dreadful ordeal. Even in the dream, I sensed something terrifying watching me. Then I watched them stab my sister's hands and feet with sharp knives. She quivered in agony. I kept shouting her name, but the next moment, I snapped awake from the dream. My limbs ached fiercely, as if they had been pierced by knives. I knew this was no ordinary dream. My sister and I have always shared a profound telepathic connection. Whenever she suffers, I feel the pain too. So I knew something terrible had happened to her. But I hadn't expected to nearly die on the road before even finding her. "Thankfully, you saved me. I must find her even though she might." Song Yuan dropped her head, her sentence hanging unfinished. In her heart, she likely knew her sister's chances were bleak. When she looked up again, her eyes were filled with boundless reverence for me. I realized then that she would lay down her life for me without a second thought, should I ask it of her. I softly caressed her head, yet a memory flickered suddenly through my mind. There was a time when another had looked up at me with similarly moist eyes. He lay at my feet, kissing my toes, declaring himself my most faithful follower, desperate for just another glance. But back then, I had amassed so many followers that his face had long faded from memory. Eventually, Song Yuan drifted into sleep beside me. An hour later, we were abruptly discarded from the truck. This was a remote mountain village. Qin Gu and his companions hauled us into a villager's home. "Village chief, they're your responsibility now. Ensure there are no mishaps before the sacrifice," Qin Gu commanded. An elderly man with a face crisscrossed by wrinkles nodded, smiling faintly. He regarded Song Yuan, his expression pausing for a moment. "She bears a striking resemblance to the previous sacrifice." Song Yuan's body shook fiercely. Qin Gu leaned in, gripped her chin, and chuckled. "You're related to the last sacrifice, aren't you?" "Let me guess, the sister." Song Yuan clenched her lips tightly. "Not talking, huh? No matter, your end is near." Qin Ji's tone was icy. He quickly gave a few directives to the village chief before leaving. The village chief's murky eyes dwelt unsettlingly a few seconds longer on my bare legs. I trembled in fear. Ultimately, Song Yuan and I were cast into a ramshackle woodshed. The shed was run down and grimy. The only window was sealed shut with wooden planks, allowing just a sliver of light through. Unexpectedly, the village chief released our bonds. As he untied us, his wrinkled hands deliberately grazed my skin, pausing excessively. He pinched my waist, his fingers creeping upward suggestively. "City girls are tender, right? Too bad you're going to die soon. You're still pure, aren't you? Let uncle make you happy before you go." I resisted subtly. This only seemed to thrill the village chief more. He breathed heavily and leered, "Stay quiet, no screaming. Those who resisted before, I had to break their limbs. With your frail arms and legs, I could easily snap them." Suddenly, plop, the village chief instinctively looked up as a droplet of viscous liquid fell onto his face. "Damn, what is this?" He disgustedly wiped the sticky fluid from his face. He failed to see that within the liquid, something minute was squirming. Such bad luck. The village chief muttered under his breath. Just as he was about to continue, his expression suddenly froze into stark fear. Beneath him, the seemingly frail girl transformed into a monstrous figure. Her face was a ghastly tapestry of countless eyes, each locked unwaveringly on him. The village chief unleashed a torrent of curses, his voice laden with terror. But moments later, he questioned his own eyes. What monster? Clearly, before him were merely two delicate sacrifices. His ardor swiftly waned. Casting a sinister glance my way, the village chief muttered, "I'll return tonight." With that, he exited. I moved towards the wall. It was etched with deep and shallow scratches, the kind made by desperate, clawing nails. "These are my sisters." Song Yuan, her body trembling, knelt to pick up a pink nail shard from the ground. She adored doing her nails, always eager to show me her latest creations. The last set she shared before her disappearance. It was identical to this one. Tightly clutching the nail shard, Song Yuan's eyes welled with tears. It was stained with dark red blood. I gently traced the marks. Suddenly, visions flickered through my mind. A girl, remarkably similar to Song Yuan, cowering in a corner, her face twisted in dread. "Don't come any closer, please." Those ugly-looking male villagers had smiles with lust on their faces. "Although you're going to be a sacrifice tomorrow, it's okay to let us have fun first." The girls' cries mixed with the men's muddy gasps. The scent of the ugliest human desires hit me. I saw the face of the village chief. He was holding a very sharp branch in his hand with a cruel smile on his face. "I've wanted to try this for a long time. Those girls were too weak before and I played a few to death. You look quite sturdy. Just satisfy, uncle." Sharp branches slowly reached the girl's body. The girl's mournful screams rang out. I let out a sigh of relief in enjoyment and narrowed my eyes slightly in satisfaction. Lust, ugliness, and fear. It was my favorite things. I watched the girl go through a night of hell. She collapsed on the floor dying, her eyes numb and empty. During the night, the girl was dragged out by Chin and the others. She lay on the ground with a strange spell drawn underneath her. All the villagers wore masks. They were chanting a very ancient language. The next moment, Brother Chin walked up to the girl, raising the awl in his hand high. The girl exploded with the greatest fear at this moment. The awl violently pierced into the palm of her hand. Sticky blood gushed out. Immediately after that, the awl stabbed into the girl's stomach, and from the bottom up, slowly cut open her chest. Her head, however, hardened and turned, staring dead on in one direction. With her final breath, she whispered weakly, "Run." The girl's body shuddered briefly before falling eerily still. Brother Chin drew out her heart, raising it high. "For our mighty deity." He gingerly placed the heart at the heart of the circle. The girl's blood ominously gathered in unison. From this macabre pool, a figure slowly took shape. All present lowered their heads, engulfed by dread. "Not enough. We need more." The unsettling sounds of gnawing filled the air, punctuated by a sinister, raspy voice. I narrowed my eyes slightly. I had anticipated something fascinating. Yet it was merely this, dull. I resolved to devour it along with the villagers at the ritual. Just as I was about to retract my consciousness, abruptly, I felt an entity had set its sights on me. Piercing gaze clung fiercely to me. A short, deep chuckle then murmured by my ear. I gathered my thoughts, knitting my brows in response. Noticing my perturbed expression, Song Yuan inquired anxiously, "Master, what troubles you?" I merely shook my head. It was no significant matter. However, this eerie feeling deeply discomfited me. For the first time, a foreign consciousness had breached the sanctity of my own. I could not pinpoint the source of this invasive consciousness. It suggests the presence of an entity as formidable as myself. Millennia ago, I was the supreme deity. However, all gods harbor a critical vulnerability: the need for believers. Our existence hinges on the robust, unwavering faith of humans. As water bears a boat, it can also overturn it. Should we fade from memory, from worship, our strength inevitably wanes, possibly even ceasing to exist. After eons of slumber, I awoke to find many had forgotten me. Consequently, my powers have diminished. Yet, as the primordial deity, the genesis of all, no entity should surpass my might. My brow creased deeply, and that consciousness, it felt unsettlingly near. Could it possibly be Song Yuan? I faced her. Song Yuan, quivering, averted her eyes and bowed her head. Master! It couldn't be her. I had delved into her memories. What then could it be? My irritation mounted. I instructed Song Yuan to remain here while I searched for clues about her sister. With tears shimmering in her eyes, Song Yuan kissed my hand in gratitude. All the while I withheld the truth from her. Her sister was no more. There's a particular intrigue in watching someone's face as their great hopes crumble to dust. I emerged from the shed. The village chief stood in the yard, his head hanging, whispering, "Why this insufferable itch? Could it be insect bites?" His scratching grew frantic, tearing red welts across his gaunt arms. But the scratching offered no relief. He barely noticed something squirming beneath the surface of his arms. His sallow skin bulged with dense clusters of transparent eggs, each harboring a writhing black speck. I stood silently by his side, watching his expression twist into madness. He was blind to my presence. To be precise, if I choose to be unseen, then unseen I am. The chief's plight unfolded just as I had foreseen. This is my unique talent. I can rapidly erode a person's mental fortitude, commonly known as crashing one's sanity points. They spiral into confusion and madness, plagued by phantoms until their sanity shatters. Yet, the most terrifying aspect of my ability isn't the madness it triggers, but its potential for assimilation and spread. Once one is afflicted, the contagion can spread to other unsuspecting humans. The village chief's breath came in wheezy, rasping gasps, sounding much like a broken fan. His eyes were wide with terror. "There are worms crawling inside." He sprinted into the house, grabbed a pair of scissors, and savagely stabbed at his hand. He attacked the egg sacs relentlessly. The sound of the egg sacs bursting filled the room. Pale yellow fluid seeped out, yet he seemed untouched by pain. I observed him with a satisfied grin. His arms were a gruesome sight, soaked in blood, dotted with ghastly openings from which bones peeked out. Suddenly, a frail old woman walked in from outside. She gazed at the village chief in horror, paralyzed for seconds before springing into action. "You old fool! Have you lost your mind?" The air was laden with the stench of blood. The village chief gazed blankly at his wife. "There are worms inside me. They must be killed." The old woman frantically tried to wrest the scissors from him. "Mad, utterly mad. There are no worms." I whispered softly in the chief's ear. "Look at who stands before you. Is she truly your wife? Or is she the girl you violated repeatedly, whom you personally sacrificed?" The chief shuddered violently. He stared fixedly at his wife, his expression suddenly freezing. How could this possibly be his familiar wife? It was unmistakably the sacrifice he had repeatedly violated. Now dead, the sacrificed woman stood right before him. Her pale, bluish face was marred with ghastly pockmarks. Slimy maggots crawled out of each one. Most horrifying of all, she smiled at him. Each time she opened her mouth, a foul-smelling black liquid dribbled out. "The worms come from you. I'll kill you. I must kill you." The village chief savagely thrust the scissors into his wife's neck. The old woman staggered and fell to the ground without a chance to scream. But the village chief didn't think it was enough. Murmuring about destroying the worms, he repeatedly mutilated his wife's face beyond recognition. I observed all this with sheer delight. Kneeling, I dipped into their blood and drew a circle. The woman on the floor was butchered beyond recognition, her original form lost. Yet, the village chief still felt unsatisfied. It's itching, still itching, terribly itchy. He shifted his gaze to his own neck, his eyes unfocused as he murmured, "There are worms here too. I must cleanse them." Brother Chin was drawn by the screams. As he stepped into the yard, his expression turned to a frown. The blood stench was stifling. The courtyard was spotless, nothing out of place. Brother Chin promptly headed to the shed and unlocked it. Inside, a girl cowered in the corner. "And the other one?" he demanded. Song Yuan's lips quivered, yet he remained silent. Brother Chin tightened his grip on Song Yuan's throat, his voice menacing. "This is no joke. Where is she?" The girl's face turned alarmingly red. Her breathing labored from the intense chokehold, tears streaming down her face unbidden. Still, she remained mute. Brother Chin speculated. Could the village chief, that old rascal, have taken her? Watching the girl's complexion shift from red to blue, her breaths growing fainter. Finally, Brother Chin's face darkened as he released Song Yuan. Just then, he caught a fleeting smile on the girl's face. "I was being hauled in by the village chief when Brother Chin visibly halted." He advanced swiftly, his expression grim, seizing the village chief by the collar and hissed, "What the hell are you doing? We agreed to keep everything confined here, not to wander off with the sacrifices at whim. Do you think it's still the old days 50 years back? Do you realize how difficult it is for me to smuggle someone here? How we've kept the deaths in our village from drawing attention, all managed through my efforts. You saved my father, and I've tolerated you for that alone. You've killed several women before, and I kept my silence. But now, you dare to take people out like this." After unleashing a stream of curses, Brother Chin found a semblance of calm. Unusually, the village chief made no attempt to argue, instead offering a blank stare. Feeling somewhat daunted, Brother Chin gradually released him. Turning towards me, he noted my tidy appearance, his frown deepening further. "The sacrifice is tonight. Let's not complicate things further," Brother Chin remarked icily. As he turned to leave, the village chief abruptly grasped his hand. It felt eerily slippery, not at all like human skin, but rather like grabbing a slick bar of soap. Frozen, a wave of unease washed over him. The village chief looked even more bizarre than usual, his pallor ghostly, his eyes unnaturally bulging, and most unsettling, his gaze remained fixed on Brother Chin. Though Brother Chin had ended many lives, he had never felt such an unnerving chill. Turning to leave, he suddenly stepped on something. With a squish. Looking down, Brother Chin saw what seemed to be a mass of sticky, mangled worms. Yet on closer inspection, these were not worms but several human eyeballs. Brother Chin's face instantly blanched. He abruptly shook his head, finding nothing under his shoes, utterly spotless as if everything he had just witnessed was a mere illusion. Brother Chin muttered curses under his breath and quickly left. Nighttime enveloped us. Song Yuan leaned against me, her eyes closed, her cheeks streaked with faint tear marks. Suddenly, as though jolted awake from a nightmare, she gasped sharply. Her complexion rapidly paled as she whispered through her tears, "Master, I think my sister might be dead. I dreamt she came to bid me farewell, urging me to live well." Song Yuan eventually broke down, sobbing heavily in my arms. I thought she would lose all hope, yet she spoke earnestly. "I cannot allow my sister's death to be in vain. I must see these people face justice." I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Justice? The law? I had no desire for such things. It would be simpler to devour them. Late at night, Song Yuan and I were bound and taken to the village shrine, where a large statue of a gentle-faced woman deity was worshipped. Song Yuan, terrified, clutched my hand tightly. All the villagers donned masks and knelt in odd prayer stances before the statue. A bizarre, blood-red ritual circle was drawn on the shrine's floor. Brother Chin signaled to some villagers to place me at the center of the circle. Terrified, I wept bitterly, begging Brother Chin for mercy. Beneath his mask, Brother Chin's gaze was icily fixed on me. "Spare you? Only if we no longer cared to live. I saw Brother Chin absent-mindedly scratch his ear. From within, a viscous black substance began to ooze. Soon after, a sinister black insect, bristling with dense tendrils, emerged from his ear canal. Brother Chin's scream pierced the air. He seized the insect, hurled it to the ground with all his might, and began stomping it furiously. I chuckled softly. The infection had commenced. The villagers watched Brother Chin with bewilderment, clueless about his frantic behavior. An old man approached, his voice trembling. "Little Chin, what's wrong? The ritual is nearly upon us. We cannot afford any errors now, lest." His tone was thick with fear. Regaining his composure, Brother Chin looked down again to find the insect gone. Yet, the eerie sound of squirming seemed to linger in his ears. He steeled himself for calm. I was bound to the center of the ritual circle. Brother Chin approached, dagger in hand, and drove it into the center of my palm. I shuddered, letting out a scream of agony as blood surged from the wound. The villagers ringed me, their stares as cold as ice. Suddenly, a woman's scream shattered the silence. "She's not bleeding blood, but swarming with insects." "What insects? Have you gone mad?" "Indeed, it's clearly just blood." Brother Chin's body shuddered violently, because he too had seen them. The insects, those grotesque, soft-bodied creatures surged forth from the girl's palm. Yet, the girl lying at the center of the ritual circle simply stared wide-eyed, her smile unnerving. No, she was less a girl and more an unspeakable monstrosity. Her body was cloaked in innumerable eyes resembling pustules. These eyes shimmered with a faint green light, unblinkingly fixated on him. Countless tendrils writhed across her skin, secreting a viscous black liquid. "Kill, exterminate the monster." Brother Chin, consumed by madness, raised his knife and lunged towards the girl. Yet, his blade did not find the girl but a mere villager instead. The chilling sound of steel slicing through flesh echoed around. The villagers' screams cascaded, one after the other. Rising to my feet, I watched in horror as the villagers descended into frenzied carnage. They were completely engulfed by madness. Then, in a startling moment, the sacred statue split open. From within emerged a blood-soaked figure. This was the deity the villagers had revered, a mere spirit, feeble despite millennia of cultivation. How could such a creature ever be worthy of the title of God? At the sight of me, it cowered in fear. It sought to flee. But how could I let it escape? My body's myriad tendrils tightly ensnared it. It emitted heart-wrenching screams, struggling desperately to break free. But to no avail. I devoured it utterly. The air grew dense with the heavy scent of blood. The ground was a macabre tableau of villagers' mutilated bodies. Satisfied, I licked my tendrils, now sleek and shiny from the absorbed nutrients. Sorry, I didn't allow them to face legal justice. I picked up an intestine from the ground, playing with it contentedly. Song Yuan stood there, her expression vacant. I presumed she was unaccustomed to such a gruesome sight. She stared at me for a while, then unexpectedly laughed. I realized something was off. Song Yuan shouldn't have had the nerve to stare at me like that. Suddenly, Brother Chin, barely clinging to life on the ground, opened his eyes wide and with all his strength, gasped, "I remember now. She's been dead for a long time." With those words, a torrent of fresh blood spilled from his mouth, and he expired. Frowning, I probed Brother Chin's memories with my tendrils. Song Yuan had not been abandoned in the car for a mere day. It had been 3 days. Her body had already begun to show signs of decay under the relentless heat. Brother Chin and the others intended to discard her. Yet, mysteriously, the girl had resurrected. However, Brother Chin's memories had been altered. A mysterious force had expunged his memories of the girl's earlier death. Turns out, Song Yuan, like me, was merely a facade. I observed her with keen interest. "What are you, really? It's uncommon for anyone to deceive me." Song Yuan emitted a soft chuckle. Her laughter, resonating with the voice that had once invaded my consciousness, was deep and raspy. It was unmistakably a man's voice. My expression turned grave. Suddenly, Song Yuan transformed drastically. From her throat came a raspy, stuttering voice. At last, I've found you. A tall man materialized before me. He possessed strikingly delicate features. He advanced towards me, knelt down, and tenderly held my foot, kissing my toes. You remain as playful as ever. I have sought you for ages, so long that even I have forgotten, and surely you must have forgotten me. He looked at me with profound affection. I fixed my gaze on him for a few moments, and suddenly, slivers of memories began to awaken. Thousands of years ago, I had personally retrieved a cohort of followers from the earthly realm. Every day, they knelt before me, their prayers fervent and heartfelt. Among these young devotees, there was one boy I cherished above the rest, distinguished by his striking beauty. Each day he would kneel at my feet, his cheek gently brushing against my calves, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. Master, could you linger a bit longer upon me? Just 1 second more of your gaze, and I am filled with joy. One more look, please. I desire neither wealth nor honor. Unlike the others, my heart beats only for you. I crave only your love. Show mercy, my master. But even the fairest visages eventually pall. I quickly lost interest in this congregation of followers. I released them, and yet I bestowed upon them wealth and status. Only that boy, he steadfastly refused to depart. Master, have you grown weary of my face? Even in death, I would not leave you. If you have grown weary of this face, horrified, I watched him seize a knife and savagely strip the skin from his face. Even as pain racked his body, his eyes radiated an undying love for me. Delightful master, you watched me for so long. I am ecstatic. One more look, I implore you. I adore you so. My love for you verges on insanity. Whispers spilled from his mouth. Blood streaked his face, yet he smiled. For the first time, I encountered a sense of novelty. Thus, I chose to keep him beside me for a time. Day in, day out, the boy tended to me, his gaze fixated with obsession. Eventually, I wearied of all worldly things. I withdrew to an underwater ice cave and succumbed to a deep slumber. This slumber spanned 10,000 years. Were it not for an expedition team from Antarctica, I would not have awakened. It's you. I was taken aback. Though clearly human, he had survived for 10,000 years. He had morphed from a fragile, beautiful youth into a man with distinct, mature features. I realize I am human and can't remain by your side forever. After you vanished, I sought you tirelessly. I feared dying without ever seeing you again. Therefore, I sought ways to extend my life. I immersed myself in cultivation. I took many lives. I eliminated all those you once found beautiful. I apologize, but my envy was too intense. Eventually, I grew stronger, yet I still couldn't locate you. Knowing your fondness for the intriguing, I imbued some spirits with my power, compelling them to entice humans into sacrifices. I was certain you would appear. How delightful! A thick, dark aura welled up from the man, enveloping me completely. He tenderly held my face and planted a kiss on my forehead. His eyes beheld me as though I were the most precious treasure on earth. This millennia-long obsession had turned him into a formidable dark entity. I felt a twinge of discomfort. Honestly, I despised the sensation of being schemed against. Perhaps it would be simpler to just kill him. My eyes softened. So you've waited for me this long?
I'm deeply sorry.
Upon hearing this, the man's pale face gradually reddened. Master, I'm so elated, truly elated. But before he could finish his sentence, my tendrils had pierced his chest. The man looked down briefly, then raised his head to me, his smile undiminished and even more intense. How splendid! Master wishes to kill me. I too long to be killed by you, Master. Yet, if I were, I could no longer see you, so I must not die. I must continue to accompany you forever. I will seek you out again. Wait for me. His figure gradually blurred and eventually disappeared. I murmured to myself, what a freak! Guided by Jiang Nua's memories, I returned to her home in the city. The person who greeted me was a young man who bore a striking resemblance to Jiang Nua. The instant he saw me, his face morphed into one of disbelief.
Sis.
Weren't you sold off by Mom to that old man? The youth was Jiang Nua's brother, Jiang Chun. Did you escape? It's good if you did. Mom's lost it. She nearly killed Dad, claiming she saw bugs. Mom's been locked up in a psych ward, and Dad's turned vegetative. I got fed up and halted his treatments. I've nearly spent that 50,000. You know I need much more money, right? You better get a job and start earning for me. With you gone, there's been no one to look after the house. It's a total mess. Jiang Chun indifferently pulled me into the house. In his memory, I remained the meek Jiang Nua, ever willing to sacrifice for her family. Regrettably, the real Jiang Nua was long gone. Flesh-colored tendrils impaled Jiang Chen's temples. His face still showed surprise as he dropped to the ground. Abruptly, there was a knock at the door. Efficiently, I kicked Jiang Chen's corpse into a room and opened the door. 3 girls, roughly Jiang Nua's age, were outside. Upon spotting me, they jeered, Jiang Nua, haven't seen you at school these past few days. Surely you're not frightened, are you? If you don't want those photos of yours to flood the school network, you'd better come back with us to school. Without you to run errands, life has gotten somewhat dull. I demurely followed the 3 girls, but the corners of my mouth gradually lifted into a smirk. I hadn't anticipated finding the human world so amusing. It appears I no longer have any need for slumber. The handsome man was shrouded in a dark aura, which began to repair the gash across his chest. Subdued murmurs escaped his throat. Master, I have come to find you.